You've been told that America waded into the Vietnam War to stop the spread of communism, a noble, if tragic, fight for freedom. But what if I told you the entire justification for escalating that war? The very incident that sent hundreds of thousands of young Americans into the jungles of Southeast Asia was built on a foundation of lies, confusion, and deliberate deception? The story you know is a fabrication. And tonight, we're going to uncover the dark truth behind the event that plunged a nation into a decade of bloodshed, the Gulf of Tonkin Incident. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're peeling back the layers of government reports and classified documents to examine one of the most pivotal and controversial moments in modern American history. The official narrative is that on two separate nights in August 1964, U.S. Navy warships were the victims of unprovoked attacks by North Vietnamese patrol boats in the international waters of the Gulf of Tonkin. This perceived aggression, we are told, left President Lyndon B. Johnson with no choice but to retaliate and commit America to a full-scale war. But what really happened on those dark, moonless nights? Was the United States truly an innocent victim? Or was it a pawn in a much larger, more cynical political game? The central question we will answer is, was the Gulf of Tonkin Incident a legitimate act of war by North Vietnam? Or was it a manufactured crisis used to justify a war that Washington already wanted to fight? To understand the events of August 1964, we must first go back to the political climate of the era. The Cold War was at its zenith, and the domino theory was the gospel of American foreign policy. This theory posited that if one nation in Southeast Asia fell to communism, its neighbors would inevitably follow, like a row of falling dominoes. Vietnam, a nation fractured after decades of French colonial rule, was the front line of this ideological battle. The communist North, led by Ho Chi Minh, was pitted against the U.S.-backed anti-communist South. By the early 1960s, the United States was already deeply involved, sending military advisors and equipment to prop up the unstable South Vietnamese government. However, President Johnson, facing an election in 1964, was wary of being seen as either too soft on communism or as a warmonger. He needed a politically bulletproof reason to escalate American involvement, something that would unite the country behind him. This is where the U.S. Navy's destroyer, the USS Maddox, enters the picture. In the summer of 1964, the Maddox was conducting electronic surveillance missions, known as Desaro patrols, off the coast of North Vietnam. These were not innocent voyages in international waters. These patrols were gathering signals intelligence to support clandestine raids by South Vietnamese commandos, operating under a covert program called Operation 34A. These CIA-sponsored raids were attacking North Vietnamese coastal installations. So, when the Maddox sailed into the Gulf, it wasn't just passing by. It was, in the eyes of North Vietnam, an active participant in aggression against their homeland. The stage was set not for a random encounter, but for a confrontation that was almost inevitable. The American public, however, was told none of this. They were led to believe the Maddox was simply on a routine patrol in peaceful, international waters, an image of innocence that would prove crucial in the days to come. On the afternoon of August 2nd, 1964, the inevitable happened. 3 North Vietnamese torpedo boats, likely responding to the recent 3-4A raids and the provocative presence of the Maddox, initiated an attack. The Maddox, alerted by its own intelligence, was ready. It fired warning shots, then direct shots, as the North Vietnamese boats launched torpedoes and opened fire with machine guns. U.S. fighter jets scrambled from a nearby aircraft carrier, the Ticonderoga, and joined the fray, strafing the small patrol boats. The encounter was brief and chaotic. The Maddox suffered only a single bullet hole. 1 North Vietnamese boat was sunk, and the other 2 were heavily damaged. From a purely military standpoint, it was a minor skirmish. But politically, it was a bombshell. President Johnson condemned the unprovoked attack and issued a stern warning to North Vietnam. The first piece of the puzzle had been laid, but it was the events of August 4th that provided the true dark truth of this story, a moment that tipped the scales from caution to all-out war. That night, both the USS Maddox and another destroyer, the USS Turner Joy, were back in the Gulf of Tonkin. The weather was stormy, the seas were rough, and the sailors were on edge. Suddenly, sonar operators began reporting dozens of high-speed torpedo contacts. The ship's radar screens lit up with what appeared to be approaching enemy vessels. For nearly 4 hours, the 2 American destroyers maneuvered wildly, firing hundreds of shells at phantom targets in the dark, churning water. The crews, terrified and running on adrenaline, reported seeing torpedo wakes and enemy cockpit lights. They believed they were fighting for their lives against a massive, coordinated North Vietnamese assault. But here is the hidden truth, buried for decades in classified reports and internal memos. There was no attack on August 4th. There were no North Vietnamese boats. There were no torpedoes. The enemy the sailors were fighting was a terrifying combination of freak weather, faulty equipment, and overactive imaginations. The sonar contacts were likely the sound of the ship's own propellers echoing in the turbulent water. The radar blips were weather effects and waves. Even the squadron commander on the scene, Captain John Herrick, sent an urgent cable in the middle of the battle, expressing serious doubts. He cabled Washington, stating, "Freak weather effects on radar and overeager sonar men may have accounted for many reports." He urged a thorough reconnaissance in daylight before any action was taken. James Stockdale, a U.S. Navy pilot flying overhead that night, later stated, "I had the best seat in the house to watch that event, and our destroyers were just shooting at phantom targets. There was nothing there but black water and American firepower." Despite these immediate, incredible doubts from the men on the scene, the Johnson administration saw its opportunity. The initial, ambiguous reports of a second attack were all the justification they needed. Defense Secretary Robert McNamara, when later questioned about the contradictory evidence, allegedly brushed it aside. The narrative had been chosen. Within hours, President Johnson addressed the nation on live television. With a grave and somber tone, he told the American people that renewed hostile actions against United States ships on the high seas in the Gulf of Tonkin have today required me to order the military forces of the United States to take action in reply. He presented this second attack as a fact, an unprovoked act of naked aggression. He had his justification. The very next day, the Johnson administration presented the Gulf of Tonkin resolution to Congress. The resolution authorized the president to take all necessary measures to repel any armed attack against the forces of the United States and to prevent further aggression. It passed almost unanimously. It was, in effect, a blank check for war. The Gulf of Tonkin incident wasn't a catalyst. It was a pretext. It was the manufactured key used to unlock a war that powerful figures in Washington had already decided was necessary. The so-called attack of August 4th was a ghost, a phantom battle born of fear and confusion in a dark storm. But it was presented to the American people and the world as a casus belli, a clear and undeniable act of war. The resolution it spawned led to the deployment of over 500,000 American troops, the deaths of over 58,000 Americans and millions of Vietnamese, and a wound on the American psyche that has yet to fully heal. The legacy of that night is a stark reminder of how easily truth can be manipulated in the service of political ambition, and how the fog of war can be deliberately created long before the first shot is ever fired. The lie of the Gulf of Tonkin became the foundation for a decade of tragedy. This brings us to the gray area where history and morality collide. We now know, with a certainty backed by declassified documents and the testimony of those who were there, that the second attack was a fabrication. But was it a deliberate lie from the very beginning? A conspiracy hatched in the White House? Or was it a case of leaders being prisoners of the moment, seizing on ambiguous information that confirmed their biases and propelled them down a path they already wished to travel? Where does the line between deception and self-deception truly lie? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to keep digging into the hidden truths of history, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs to know this story, and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives. Your support helps us build a community dedicated to questioning the official narrative.